Thank you so much for being here today for our lesson launch, which is another one of our Copyright Unlocked series webinars. Today we are joined by Copyright and Creativity, and we're really excited to explore the classroom resources that they have to offer us. My name is Brandon Rader. I am the Music and Theater Arts Consultant at the Department of Public Instruction. And I am joined today by Dr. Laura Stotterman, who is the K-12 Dance and Visual Arts Consultant. And we are led at the department by former theater teacher, Dr. Lori Major Carlin. Please do feel free to reach out and email any of us at any time if you have any questions, and we are happy to answer them. As I mentioned a second ago, this is part of our Copyright Unlocked series. This is our fourth installment in the series, and the first three have been archived in our PD catalog, which you can access by clicking any of those images on that black and white image. We also have two more webinars coming up in December. One is with Swank Motion Pictures, and they are the only licensing agency for movies for K-12 situations in the nation. So great stuff from them. It'll be really applicable to all content areas, actually, even math, science, ELA, social studies. And then we are super stoked to have the Art of Education come and give a webinar about their resources that align directly to visual art education, and how that connects to our six conceptual bins. Before we go any further today, I'm going to drop this into the chat as well. Everybody who is participating in this webinar, whether it's live or recorded, you are going to want a copy of this reflection guide, and you are going to want that because you are going to turn it in with your CEU survey at the end of this webinar, and that is sort of your evidence for participating in this session. You will be asked to make a force copy, and then you can go ahead and type into it as you are able. Okay. So we have six conceptual bins about copyright and ethics that we like to talk about. Sometimes these conceptual bins span across a small area of grades, and sometimes they are touch points in both elementary, middle, and high school. We wanted to make sure that regardless of whether a student starts their theater art education, let's say in middle school, that they have foundational knowledge in each of these six concepts. So the first one is origination versus copying. I know as a general music elementary teacher, I often asked my students to copy me, whether it was imitating my movements, imitating my fingerings, which bar I'm hitting, or draw a quarter note just like this. Draw this rhythm just like this. And sometimes we ask students to not copy us and to create something new. So that's what we're talking about here. In the youngest grade levels, we really ask them to be able to recognize and distinguish the difference between when it's okay to copy and when it's not okay to copy. From there, we talk about legal and ethical sharing. So what does it mean to share either our own or someone else's artwork? Attribution and credit. So if we are using somebody else's, how, when, why do we actually say I borrowed this from this other artist? We build our copyright vocabulary in those entrance points. So in sixth grade and in beginning, we take a look at more complex uses at the honors level in high school, and we have students evaluate these ethics cases and judge whether or not something is correct and appropriate and kind, both in elementary school and middle school, and again in high school. So if you are interested in learning a little bit more about those conceptual bins, we do have this guide here. You can access it through clicking here on the slide deck or in your reflection journal. But we're going to go ahead and use these conceptual bins to provide a framework for a lot of the rest of the webinar. I'm going to pass it off here to the amazing and incomparable team over at Copyright and Creativity. I will say that the work that they have done is was heavily influential on the standards writing team who created these standards. So most of their resources are already very, very, very aligned with the North Carolina standards because they were a source of inspiration. So, Dana, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Brandon. And we too are excited to participate with you folks today. We're excited that we get to share our free resources, and you heard it right, they're all free. They're comprehensive K-12, and they're just ready to go. You could use our resources to start teaching with them tomorrow. So I'm Dana Greenspan. I'm a retired educator in Southern California, outside of Los Angeles. I have 24 years in education, and my last position was with the Ventura County Office of Education, which served both as a school district with court and community students, but also as a service agency for over 20 districts with over 100,000 students. And our smallest district was 30, was a small rural farming district where the superintendent was the principal, and she also taught kindergarten. And our largest district was around 20,000 students. So we've had the gambit of experience with most size districts. And as you'll see, we have a bit.ly. It's case sensitive. It's CC NOV for November 25 NCDPI. And we'll show that on a couple different slides so that you can access the slide deck. So next slide. So I'm very honored to have three awesome educators. When these ladies have a chance, when you have a chance to meet them, you're going to be equally impressed. They serve as ambassadors for their respective states. We have Julie Jameson, who will be joining our webinar a little bit later, but right now we have Jen and Brittany. So Jen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Jen Roth. I am an elementary librarian in Pennsylvania. I teach students K through 6. And just this past year, I was the Pennsylvania Innovator of the Year Award for my state, which was really exciting. And these lessons I know have a lot to do with that as well. So welcome, and I'm happy that you're here today.
And Brittany?
Hi, so I am a preschool through 4th grade librarian in Arkansas, and I also teach a copyright class for the University of Central Arkansas for their graduate program for librarians, but also instructional technology students. And I'm excited to be here with you guys today.
Great, thank you. Next slide. So here are the topics we're going to cover today. You'll feel free to ask questions in the chat if you have them. We find that we cover over 90% of the questions folks ask. So if we don't answer your question or acknowledge it immediately, it means that we're covering it further down in our presentation. So next slide. So this doodle activity is one we often open our professional development sessions with, and also we use it with students. And we ask folks to just take a sticky note or piece of paper that they have and do a quick doodle. And you'll understand what this has to do later on with copyright. But if you think you know, feel free to put the response in the chat now. So next slide. And I'm going through this quickly because I know you want to get to the meat of the material that Jen and Brittany. So just a disclaimer, we're not lawyers. We are not providing legal advice. And so nothing that you hear today should be construed as such. So just a little heads up there. And here are all of our resources. Again, they're free. They're not going to be free today and then subscription based tomorrow. So we're very proud of that. We're licensed under Creative Commons, so you can use our materials in part or in whole. We just ask for attribution. And the materials were developed by thank you. By educators like yourselves and lawyers on both sides of the copyright spectrum. So the result was a neutral, unbiased approach to copyright and fair use. So we're very proud of that. And we're going to cover all of these resources, lesson plan slides, videos. We have our new escape rooms, which we'll share as well. And when we go live to our website, we'll share all these resources and how you're able to access them. So, yep, next slide. So copyright it's a complicated subject matter. It's very intimidating. When I taught digital citizenship at the county, I hoped that nobody would ask me a question about copyright because I didn't really understand it. And there were no resources out there. So it's great now that we have these resources, and not only can students be confused by it, but teachers as well. And the more you teach the lessons, the better versed you will become with copyright, and your confidence will increase multiple fold as you learn right alongside your students. So next slide. And our approach is really to, like the first bullet point says, is to emphasize kids' roles as creators. So you're not going to find lists of you can't do this or you can't do that, but instead we teach students the basics of copyright and fair use, and then show them what they can do and how they can legally and ethically use the materials of others. And so you'll see, we're going to show a little video, but you'll see it's very positive based, and students respond really well to the content. So they are happy to learn as they go and are able to apply this to their own creative works. So, it's important to teach copyright. So not only is our content standards aligned like it is to the North Carolina standards, but also there can be significant financial repercussions to a district who's found that they've infringed in copyright. And the one example we have is a Texas school district. They had to pay over $9 million in fines. It had to do with copying and reproducing what was could be construed as consumables. And so teachers need to know what they can and can't do with their materials. And so it's important to, always check your purchase agreements and your adoption agreements and know exactly what you're able to provide, what materials you can provide to students. And now I'll turn it over to Jen, and she's going to go through the copyright basics with you.
All right, so as Dana was saying, one of the things that we need to look at before we jump into the lessons and how we can apply them in our classrooms is that we need to talk about the basics. So let's start at the very beginning of copyright protections in the United States. I do want to make it known that copyright does vary from different countries, and so we are specifically talking about copyright in the United States. And maybe you didn't realize this, but there is protection for authors and inventors established in the United States Constitution. So it's important to convey to students and ourselves that the purpose of copyright is to promote the progress of science and the useful arts. This is about protecting creative work, not just your own, but also your students and for those around you. The United States Constitution gives Congress the power to pass copyright laws. Because of this, artists and creators have some control over their work for a limited time. In the next slide, you're going to see, well, what exactly does copyright cover? Copyright covers any original creative work once it's written down, recorded, or digitally saved. This includes songs, books, articles, photos, video games, movies, software, blog posts, home videos, even the doodle, if you did the doodle at the beginning of the presentation that you drew while waiting. And why is that? Well, because one, it's an original creative work, and two, it is now in fixed form. On the next slide, you're going to see when you make an original work, you get to decide who makes copies, make derivatives, who can distribute those copies, display or perform the work in public. I really emphasize with my students a lot that you also have the power to do this as well. So when you make an original work, again, you can decide on who makes those copies, who wants to, if you want those copies distributed. Next slide talks about a video. It is one of the examples from our copyright and creativity lessons, and we're not going to share it today. However,
Jen, sorry, I think we do actually have time to to
Yeah.
show it. So,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, sorry.
Fantastic. So, before you share it though, I just want to emphasize that the videos included in the lesson plans correspond with like Google Slides. We give you the completed lesson, and therefore, here's an example of one of our videos that we're going to show you today that corresponds with one of our lessons.
Technology is awesome, isn't it? Not that technology. I'm talking about the revolutionary technology invented hundreds of years ago, called the printing press.
Dude, that looks old.
Oh, it's old. 600 years old.
Before Gutenberg's printing press, if you wanted a book, someone had to copy it by hand. Only the richest people in the world could afford to buy books. Most people didn't have access to creative work at all. But the printing press changed all that. For the first time, mass production of books became possible, and big ideas could spread fast. An author could finally reach a mass audience, but also, for the first time, an author's life's work could be copied and sold by anyone with a printing press. Does that seem fair?
No way.
So, in 1710, the British government passed the Statute of Anne.
No unauthorized copying of a book for 14 years, with the option to renew for another 14.
By the way, unauthorized means without permission. So authors had time to earn some money from their work before it fell into the public domain. The idea was to encourage them to keep writing, which means even more creativity. Nice, huh?
Nice.
Fast forward 60 years. When it came time to write the Constitution, guess what? Our founding fathers included copyright.
To promote the progress of science and useful arts, by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries.
What?
The Constitution gives Congress the power to pass copyright laws, and as a result, authors have the right to get paid for their books and to decide who gets to make copies.
That makes sense. If you put in all the time to write a really good book that people want to read, you should be able to get paid for it.
And printing books was just the tip of the iceberg. Now I'm talking about your phone.
Oh, there we go.
Yep.
So as you can see from the video, the materials are engaging, they're positive. I teach elementary, so even in the lower levels, we don't say, you can't do this, you can't do that. But rather we're showing positively how students can be ethical creators and show respect for the creativity of others. And I think that's really important because our students will respond better if we are telling them what they can do versus what they can't do. On the next slide, you're going to see what there are limitations to copyright. Copyright doesn't cover everything. First, there are some things that are not covered by copyright in the first place. And then also fair use allows use of copyright protected works under specific conditions as ruled by the Supreme Court, as you can see here. And then lastly, copyright does expire, and eventually it does fall into the public domain. In the United States, this includes creative work published more than 95 years ago. For works created during the last 95 years, but before 1978, copyright status is more complicated and depends on whether copyright holders took the proper steps to register and renew their copyrights. For works created since 1978, copyright protection is basically automatic and will not expire for many years. You can see on the next slide that there are things that are not covered by copyright. As you can see, facts and ideas, non-creative lists such as maps, information of like how far from one place to another, what are the routes to get there, phone lists, government documents, website, including their websites, videos, and those NASA videos, which is awesome, so we can use them in the classroom. Speaking of working in the classroom, this is Brittany is going to talk to us today about using copyrighted works in school.
All right, so on the next slide, we're going to really dig deep into using these copyrighted works in school. A specific exception to copyright allows teachers to show or play a copyrighted work in class without having to rely on fair use at all. And that's this first one here, the in-class teaching part. In certain situations, we're allowed to use copyrighted works. First being in-class teaching, that's performing or displaying a copyrighted work in the classroom. It's important with this exception that you understand that this is face-to-face, and this is also performing or displaying. This is not talking about making copies. And then, of course, there's fair use. We will come back to that in the next few slides. But let's go down to number 3. And this is Creative Commons, public domain, or district subscriptions. So all of those things can help you be able to use copyrighted works in school. An example would be if a history teacher or maybe a government teacher wants to show part of a biography of George Washington, and of course their copy that they're showing is legally obtained, they can show it. The media that you're using has to meet that true educational purpose. It cannot be a reward. So this isn't like elementary and inside recess. This is having to do with the actual curriculum. If the instruction is online and not face-to-face, there is something called the TEACH Act, and that may apply. However, there are district requirements to that, so it's not always the easiest to navigate. We do have resources about the TEACH Act on our website, and we can show you how to get to that. All right, let's go to the next slide. So fair use is one that we always look to for education. We know that sometimes you can use copyrighted works without seeking the actual permission from the creator. So yes, you can ask permission, but fair use helps us not have to do that. It is allowed under a Supreme Court decision to be able to do these things. It describes the purpose of fair use in this way: to avoid rigid application of the copyright statute when, on occasion, it would stifle the very creativity which that law is designed to foster. So let's look a little bit more at fair use. So fair use helps with these things: criticism, comment, but notice the one that's in that's highlighted, and that's teaching. Of course, that helps us. That doesn't mean everything that we do as teachers is considered fair use. So there are things that we have to look at to make sure as a teacher we're using it correctly. So let's look at the fair use 4-factor test. It's important to look at using this 4-factor test when you are trying to decide if a copyrighted work can be used without the permission of the creator. Because again, not everything that we use in education is okay to use. However, when you're looking at these 4 factors, you are going to need to look at all 4 factors. So you'll consider all of them when determining if your use is fair use. Again, we're not lawyers. We're just presenting these facts that are good for you to know as educators. Depending on the age of your students, you might introduce this idea, or you might just kind of glaze over it. Some of them you can really dig into. I know even with my 4th graders, I do at least mention it, because especially the factor of effect on the market, they understand that, and it helps to kind of show them why copyright is important. Because I will say, when I talk to my 4th graders, they always think copyright is a negative thing. So it is we're really trying to show that copyright is a positive. On the next slide, there is a worksheet that's really helpful. It helps you to document your rationale for those 4 factors. It's through Cornell, and this is a link, so you can click on it and you can go to this checklist. It really helps to show your good faith in fair use. This is something that I know when I'm teaching my graduate librarians, I show this to them. So that way it's just something to be able to say, I was in good faith. I did it because I thought I met the 4-factor test. All right, let's go to the next slide and let's talk about using copyrighted works with public domain, Creative Commons, or district subscriptions. This is that 3rd way. So when we go and look at public domain on the next slide, Jen kind of mentioned this already. We know that copyright eventually expires and creative works fall into the public domain. And again, a few slides back, it kind of talked about what creative work that was published more than 95 years ago, or since 1978, that little time frame that was given. But public domain is a great thing to use. This is also something that is great for us to teach our students as well. And then we have Creative Commons. Creative Commons is on the next slide. Thank you. Creative Commons is a licensing system where creators give advance permission for others to use and reuse their work for free. There is a huge body of Creative Commons work available. This is great to know as educators, but also it's a great thing to teach your students. Creative Commons license may allow reuse without restriction, or it may have some conditions. So you do want to make sure on the Creative Commons website that you are checking what the different licensing means. Each of them have little different symbols. But one of the things that I think is important too, especially with your older students, is show them as creators that they can also put Creative Commons license on their work as well. It goes back to them being creators, not just consumers. On the next slide, this actually shows the different types so that you can kind of see. I will say as a presenter, this is something I've actually started doing. I was in a presentation one time and someone actually asked me why I didn't have one. And I thought, oh my goodness, I should. So have it for yourself as well, especially when you put a lot of work into your stuff. But we want to make sure we're giving attribution to these people, these creators that have decided to allow us to use their work. All right, we're not going to show this video, but this is a good video that's part of our curriculum. It's called Help, I Need Something, Finding Creative Work with Almost No Restrictions. And this is going to go into public domain and Creative Commons. So this is a good one to watch later, but it's also good to show with your students as well.
Something right now.
All right, so now we're going to get into our website where you can find all of our stuff. And Jen and I are going to kind of walk you through the different things that you can find. I will say, because you can see it on this slide, it talks about registering. It's very easy to register. We do that for to keep track of statistics for our grants. But when you register, you are just pretty much putting your email address, where you're located, but you don't have to have a password. So anytime you log in, you're just putting in your email and then you're logging in. So that's pretty great. Yes, and that's how you register. It's really easy.
Did you want me to stay on the website or go back to the slide deck?
Yes, stay on the website, please.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
So our resources are broken up by elementary, middle school, high school, and then professional development. Let's start with the professional development for teachers. At the top, you're going to see that it's about why teach copyright. We have resources, feedback, and donate. If you scroll down, we do a professional development course. It is on Canvas. You do not have to be a Canvas user to utilize it. You can go at your own pace, and it's completely free to sign up for. Some schools have a Ludo, and so therefore they have completed the Ludo training for like service, professional development hours and so forth. And the Canvas one is one that I've completed because I'm not in a Ludo school, but it goes over copyright basics, the fair use basics, and everything that you would need to know as an educator. And again, it is self-paced, and so I just went on it, did it for a few hours, came back, and just kept going back and forth. So you're going to get a lot of that. If you go ahead.
Sorry. I've actually gone back a few times and watched some things just to remind myself, especially when I take a few months off from talking about copyright. I like to go back and refresh myself.
And then we also have if you click on resources at the top tab, you're going to see office hours and webinars. And we also have office hours. We actually have office hours tonight. If you would like to join us, I will be there. You can ask questions or follow-up questions about today and the presentation or anything like that. But we also have office hours on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. As you can see, the dates are there, and they are all on Zoom. And so you can click there, you can join us at any given time. So let's say like a month or two from now, you're working on something and you might be stuck, or you just want a second opinion, because it's always helpful getting a second opinion. You can jump on, talk to us, and then jump off, make a quick little stop. We also
it's not formal.
Okay,
I was just going to jump in and say it's not formal. You don't have to send us an email to tell us you're coming. Just jump in and ask the questions or advice that you need, or just to talk something out.
And then at the bottom, we have some webinars that we have done in the past. And so if at any point in time you want to look at some of our past webinars, mentoring K-12 teachers through the copyright maze, I always say that's my favorite. It's really going into details as an educator. What are things that we really can be doing and staying more positive on making sure that we're setting an example and being a role model for our students. And then we have new K-12 escape room activities. So for all of our lessons, right after the lessons, you can have your students break out and do escape rooms. My students absolutely love them. I even do them in kindergarten. I do them more as like a whole group activity. We'll talk a little bit more about that. If you go back up to resources, as I was saying earlier, they're broken up from elementary, middle school, and high school. If you want to click on elementary, the elementary is set up a little differently than the secondary. And elementary is broken up by grade bands. If you scroll down a little bit, you're going to see a lesson PDF. You're going to see Google Slides, and you're also going to see the escape room. Everything is there for you. I know Brittany and I have talked a lot about, if your students are just learning about copyright and fair use, what we would recommend is maybe going down and teaching first grade. Like if you have third graders, maybe you want to teach the first grade lesson, or maybe you've been teaching it for a while. And I know for a fact that my students, I go to some of the middle school lessons because they have had this set since kindergarten now for the last 5-6 years. And so therefore they are like excelling through the materials, and then that way we can do the secondary part. The really nice part about the PDF and the Google Slides is that everything in the PDF is in the Google Slides. And a lot of time when I first started teaching copyright, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to say correctly. I don't want to make a mistake. And so therefore what I did was the script is there for you. And I stayed on the script. It also has the objectives, how long it's going to take you to do the lesson, but you can always pick and choose, maybe take some things out. Kindergarten is about respecting the person, talking about how they are a creator and you want to own your own work, right? You want to put your name on your paper. And so what I do is I tie this in with library, and we'll read a book, and I'll have the students maybe draw their favorite part of the book or the setting of the book. And then as they are handing their papers in, I start calling out different names, and they're like, wait a second, but that was my paper. No, that's my paper. No, it's my paper. And I'm like, well, I don't know who anybody's paper is because nobody put their name on it. Like, how did you feel when someone was trying to claim somebody else, your paper, but claiming it as theirs? And they're always like, I was so upset. I was so sad. It's kindergartners. Of course, they're going to use all that verbiage and lingo. So again, kindergarten is very basic and learning about being a creator. We don't use the word copyright until the third grade where we jump in there. And that's just because, in the younger grades, they don't understand what copyright is. We're not expecting them to. So we start jumping into that into a little bit of the older grades. Britt, do you want to add anything else about the elementary?
Yeah, the only thing that I was going to add is about the videos. They are wordless, so you're watching these characters act out these different scenarios, but it's kind of great because it provides great discussion pieces. Yeah, and they're super short. They're not very
Yeah,
so
as you can see
with older students, yeah, they're real simple, but they don't have any words. But it allows you to have that discussion with your students.
I really like the elementary lessons for the idea of there's some social emotional learning in it as well. So after each video is played in the Google slide, it will have follow-up questions of, how did that make you feel? Or, what would you do if that happened to you in that situation? And so again, you're not just teaching them about copyright and fair use and being their own creator and creator of their own work, but you're also bringing in other aspects as well. Again, the social emotional learning aspect, which is nice. The secondary level, if we move to secondary, so we go to resources and click middle school, Britt's going to kind of explain to you of how those are organized.
Yeah, so the middle school, even though I'm a K4 librarian, I love the middle school ones. It's so funny because even when let's say you're teaching a 4th grade class and I have 5 different classes, on my Monday class, I might have to teach the 3rd grade lesson because they don't really have enough background knowledge about copyright, but then I could have my Thursday class teaching me stuff about copyright, like flagging people on TikTok, which they're not supposed to be on. So you kind of, I've always based it on what or where my students are. My favorite lesson, because if you notice, middle school's not grade level banded, it is just strictly lesson 1, lesson 2. My favorite is lesson 1, and that's because it really gets into creators and consumers. Everything in the lesson is extremely positive. They do come with the Google Slides and the PDF, just like Jen showed you in elementary. These videos are different though. They are longer. Do you mind clicking on one of the lessons? It doesn't matter which one. Maybe the first one. On the lesson, sorry. If you click over to the side.
Yeah, just click and further to the left on lesson 1. Not in the video, but yep, there you go.
There we go.
Yeah, thanks.
There you go.
Scroll down just a little. One of the things that you'll notice in middle school and in high school, the lessons have the in-class videos down here. The clips are here because we do know that you might not have time for everything. So those videos are here if you just need something to quickly show. And that's another great thing about this one too. But again, if you want to do the full lesson, you can go up and you can have the Google slide as well. The first 2 videos that are on here, I always like to show my my 4th graders because it shows these, they're studying, like one of them's about polar bears, and they're studying polar bears, and they sit out for like 2 weeks in the snow waiting on this mom to come out of her den. And then it shows how these cute polar bears come up to their cabin, and at first the kids are like, oh, that's so cute, and then you can talk about how scary that is, and then you start having that discussion of, okay, well, these guys that are filming this, they spent all of this time making this, and then we get into talking about how they would feel if they were in their shoes and something got taken from them without their permission. So it leads to a great introduction for lessons.
And everything is, you'll see a Google under the resource, the Google folder, G Suite folder,
Yeah.
and all of our lessons and all the components you need are there. So if you want to download it ahead of time, you have access to all the to the PDF, to the slides, to all the videos. So everything's there for you to accommodate different styles of teaching. So.
And if you go to resources, if you go to the high school, it's going to look identical to the middle school. And so again, you can decide on what videos and what lessons you would like to pull out and utilize. Because I know at the high school level, talking to our high school ambassador, there's more of a collaboration, not like a set library class. So it's more flexible scheduling. And therefore, you can work with the English teachers and other teachers and implement these as needed.
And Julie's
Julie
on here.
Jumped on.
Yeah, she
Julie,
is.
do you want to talk about the high school level, about anything else?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be joining you a little late. I had my own PD session I had to attend today too, all day. Yeah, so the high school lessons, there's 3 major lessons. They are all very robust. So what I would recommend is, for time's sake, you might have to just pull a few concepts out of each one, app smash them kind of scenario where maybe you need to combine a slide or 2 from lesson 1 and then maybe use another one from lesson 3, or feel free to use those videos, because I know as a high school librarian, I don't have the time I do get with classes is very precious and very regimented. Like we have a certain set number of minutes and I don't get them for long. So a lot of times I sneak in copyright instruction in other creative ways, but I do pull out resources from our wonderful curriculum. So.
And if you just jump down, Brandon, to the presenter instructions, those I think will be helpful to teachers in the arts, because there's a section, so not only talks about the basics of copyright, you can use there you go. But it talks about how you apply how you integrate copyright instruction with various projects. And so it'll be helpful. I'm sure a lot of the projects that the arts teachers are doing with students can be found in those presenter instructions, and it will give you ways to tie in that copyright instruction. So that could be very helpful.
And I'll just jump in for a second and say that all of the elementary examples have to do with sharing music or sharing visual arts. So it actually, everything that you guys put together for, media teachers, librarians, fit seamlessly in our world. So you don't even have to adapt anything at the elementary level. So
yeah, and
it's
again,
awesome.
Thanks. The great thing about the elementary lessons, again, is they're animated without narration, so students can watch and retell the story. So you can use it with ESL students, with students learning a foreign language, or like you said, various arts, and it's age appropriate. There's nothing that makes it geared strictly for kindergarten students. So.
And I know the next slide, which we're not going to go to just yet, is about the escape rooms, but I wanted to show you them on the actual website. So if you go to resources and go to elementary, just because that's what I'm most familiar with, if you click on, let's just do first, kindergarten, I've already explained the lesson. If you click on the escape room, it's going to give you the facilitator guide. The facilitator guide is for you. It gives you the answers for one, so that's really important. But it also gives you clues of how you can get the answer. So if students are getting stuck at like the older level, maybe 4th or 5th grade or even 3rd grade, instead of giving them the answer, what I would recommend is taking that clue and that explanation of how you got the answer and giving them a hint, because you do want them to think on their own and be their own, think about it and work together as a group. If you click on one of the escape rooms, if you want to click on one of them, there you go, that one. There are Google form for them to fill out. We do not collect any data on the Google form. The Google form is just going to tell you if the answer is correct or not. If it's not correct, it's going to give a little red. And if it is correct, then it will allow you to submit it. What I like to do is I like to click on a picture on the side for one of the escape rooms, and then that way they can see it in a larger. And this one, yes, for 3rd grade. And so students would be able to read the story and then figure out which part of a story. I'm trying to look at what this one was about. They'll be able to follow along with the story and figure out if it's an up, down, left, right, directional lock. And then, or you on the left-hand side could do color lock, number lock, or word lock. You can choose any of them over there. What I like to do is just have my students either two things. I either have them a piece of paper when they're working in a group so they can write down the answers and go back and put it in the Google form, or I'll have one student have the Google form open on their computer and then the other student have it open with the pictures so that they will be able to figure it out together. And
Jen, for the younger students, it should probably be a teacher-led activity, a whole group.
Yeah, so for kindergarten, 1st grade, and 2nd grade, I do have them as on the board. What I'll do is, especially in kindergarten, I'll put it on a board and I'll say, what are you seeing? Let's talk about it. In kindergarten, it's a lot of letters, numbers, there's colors. Again, definitely age appropriate and relevant. And then for the older grades, I do have them go off into groups. At the secondary level, you could have them do it on their own. I do want to emphasize, though, that our lessons the escape rooms are not meant to just do as a standalone activity. They do go along with the lessons. And so therefore, if you're going to do the escape rooms, the students are going to need the lesson to gather that background information before they're able to complete the escape rooms.
So if I could get Brandon to go back to the presentation, because there's some slides that Julie's going to cover that I think will be especially applicable to your audience. So if we go, so we talked about so Julie's going to talk about using copyright in the real world and how students can access it.
Yeah, so this is my favorite section to talk about because I am a big advocate for having instruction what you give students to learn, any skill-based thing that is relevant to what they'll be doing in real life. So when you do any project and it's involving others' creative work, you need to know that as educators, we have a really wide umbrella of that educational fair use. So that means pictures, graphics for a book report, images of book covers, cities, artists, renditions of different things, video, music. If it's for an educational purpose, a true educational purpose, it's, as long as it's not getting distributed beyond the classroom, then it's pretty much covered under fair use. So that's great, because then we can teach students to build upon another's creative work. We have to remember to still cite your sources. But if we can go to the next slide. Okay, this is just, we're not going to play this video because we are already short on time, it looks like, but this is an example of how copyright affects people in the real world. This is one of our high school videos. And this one even has Taylor Swift in it, and just some real world examples to show students that, yes, this is going to apply way beyond your school years to you and everyone else too. Okay, you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so examples of ways to tie in copyright instruction. Like I said, I really am a big advocate for making sure that it is that we're creating those authentic opportunities for students. So some examples of ways that I have used teaching copyright within curriculum I already teach, or other teachers are already teaching. Podcast, that's where you can really get into those music and audio clips. Infographics, images, video that can be embedded in those, book trailers, digital collages, documentaries, blogs or vlogs, newsletters, and also practicing publishing learning to a public audience. So all of those are ways that we can try to integrate copyright instruction into what we're already teaching. Okay, next slide. All right, so some elementary ideas that I want you to think about. As you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, we have some standalone lessons or how you can align with the lesson. But also, one of the ways that I taught when I taught at the elementary level was embedding copyright skills in a HyperDoc. So if you want to click on the Natsume picture, that's going to take you out to my HyperDoc that I created that goes along with a picture book. And you are welcome to reuse any of this. And if you go to slides, let me see, if you just want to scroll down to slides, let me see what it is. Well, I first want to show you how I do have a video embedded. Again, like me plucking out certain parts of copyright to do. You can stay right on that slide back to the bento box. I have a video here at the beginning so students understand their rights as creators. And then if you go to that bento box activity, so the idea was that they were supposed to choose their favorite book, their favorite picture book, and create a bento box, which was part of the Natsume book, and find images online that represent their favorite book. And then after that, if you go to the next slide on that HyperDoc, they get to decide how do they want to share this. So again, thinking again about how they have some power as creators and they get to decide, even at an early age. I would say this activity would be great for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And they get to decide who they want to share with. And one thing that I've really started applying in my practice as an educator is asking students, do you care if I share this work? I think this podcast you did was amazing. Do you mind if I put it on my website? And some students will say, no, I do not want that on there. And obviously we have to share work with the teacher to get the grade, but starting to be more intentional, I think, is really important with students about how that work is getting shared to others. Okay, let's go to the next slide and think about middle school. So some examples for middle school. This viral ghost painting was a really cool activity I did at the high school library too, but it could be applied at middle school or elementary really, is going to the Library of Congress and getting those public domain images, printing artworks, and then transforming them into art of their own, and showing that what is Library of Congress, maybe showing that video, and then also like those viral ghost paintings. It was so cute because then they could add a spooky scene to these really old pictures that are in the public domain. So transforming it in another way, going back to that purpose and character and how you're transforming it into something new and different. Other ideas, using novels are great. Again, book bento boxes, collages, designing different book covers. Like, look at this book cover. How could you make it different? What would you do differently with this book cover? There's also this, I'm borrowing this graphic design challenge. If that is something you can click on, that is one of our art teachers in my district that made this lesson. It is about it's using Canva. So this one's really good because you can apply both art and music to it. The assignment was for students to use Canva to create new album covers for a musician. So a great way to practice both learning about rights, musical rights of others. And so there, I said to tie in lesson 1 to discuss how the more hard work and time the creator puts into a project makes copyright protection even more significant. That's addressed in lesson 1. And then lesson 3 discusses musicians and why it's important to share music legally. I don't see my high school on there, but that's okay. So high school, a lot of these things overlap with high school. I've done digital collages with students, like we read the book Radium Girls, and then they had to find pictures on the internet and somehow learn how to transform that into a new collage, and give it new meaning. Also, I'm always doing podcasts with my teachers. That is really big right now. In fact, that's what's happening in my library with the accelerated English kids right now, and they're creating This I Believe podcast. And I went over with them how to, whether or not they should be including their favorite song. And it was really a great opportunity for us to have that conversation and talk about copyright. Is that, if we use that song, is that going to be a replacement of the original or a substitution for it? Or are you just using a small piece of that song? Also, where are you sharing your finished product? Do you plan to share it outside of the school walls? So those are always good discussions to have anytime students are creating anything. You can go to the next slide. Okay, again, I really encourage students to take advantage of the stock images and videos and sounds that you hear in our favorite platforms. So making sure they understand that they can simply use what's already there in the platforms because those are considered stock media and free to use. However, I do understand sometimes, even me, like when I'm creating newsletters for my teachers, I don't always want to use a picture from the Creative Commons off Google because you can't always get the best pictures from there. So then you have to consider, well, if I find the best image on the internet, who's this being shared with? And so we have to have those discussions and reflections for ourselves too, and what we create as educators. Okay, next slide. I think this one goes to Jen.
Guys, we're running short on time, so maybe for this one, Jen, if you just have a word or two to say, but these are just some resources for you to use.
These are just some resources that I use for when I'm looking for images for projects and activities. So you can go ahead and they're linked there, and yeah, those are just where I get my images from, and I have my students.
Okay, so music, this is back to me. So music is very complicated because there are many copyright holders to every song. So, so you can see on that screen, those are just a few of the copyright holders that might have rights over that music. That's why music can be really tricky. So if we go into the next slide, the question is always, isn't it okay to just use a certain amount of my favorite song? And you know, the answer to that is it could sometimes qualify as a fair use, but it depends on things like how is that work going to be distributed? Again, is your use of the song going to be a substitution for the original? So I'll reinforce this idea again, if your project stays in the classroom, it's probably okay. But if you take that project and share it with others and open it up to a public audience, you have to reassess those 4 factors of fair use. Streaming music at school. So this one, teachers do this all the time. And also show videos, all of that. So remember, this is more of a terms and conditions rather than a copyright. So when you sign up for these platforms, you are agreeing personally that you are going to follow the terms and conditions. So you'll just want to be very conscious of that. Next slide. Okay, again, sharing those real life examples, I think, is very, very powerful. This is an example you could share with high school students or with other educators. This was a famous case, copyright case, Andy Warhol Foundation versus Goldsmith. If you look at those two, the one on the left is Lynn Goldsmith's original photograph. The one on the right is when Andy Warhol created a series of silkscreen images using one of those photos. And so after Prince's death, that picture ended up on the Vanity Fair magazine for a 2016 article. Went to court. The Supreme Court ruled against the Warhol Foundation, citing that it was not fair use. The reasoning, they focused on that purpose and character. And although the original photo and silkscreen had different aesthetic qualities, you can see it looks different. They are both used for commercial purposes. And it was the same thing. It just wasn't transformative enough. All right, Brittany.
So we only have, what do we have, about 3 minutes left?
Yeah, but we have, they have to wrap it up. So yeah, just, you can just flip through it.
We love this. Keep going.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right, so this is infringement and plagiarism. The biggest thing is just to know they are different. They do get confused. Educators confuse it sometimes because both raise very important questions. So pretty much just to understand that plagiarism really focuses on that academic integrity, and then copyright focuses on providing incentives for the production of new creative work. This is where I always laugh with my 4th graders because they like to say things like, ooh, you've been copyrighted, because they don't understand that it's really the infringement. So that's one of the big things that we do talk about. But sometimes, one can be an infringement and one can be, and be okay with plagiarism, or vice versa. And so you'll see that in the next slide. It kind of shows you an example of, is it copyright or plagiarism?
Yep. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. And this one just talks about, you have a blog post. The student pulls the image from a photographer's website. She gives full attribution. So, is it okay? Is that infringement or plagiarism? And if you click again. And even though the student cited the source, it's still infringing on copyright because they did not ask permission, and it wasn't fair use because it was posted. It goes back to what Julie said. It was posted online to the blog.
Yeah, and in our language, in our new standards, we talk about whether something is unethical and against copyright, or whether something is ethical but still against copyright, or unethical but following copyright. And so this idea of plagiarism really fits really well in that. Is it legal and is it ethical at the same time?
Which goes into the next slide about ethics, because we get asked a lot about AI and is it infringement? Well, when it comes to copyright right now, the Copyright Office is saying if it is no human creator, then it's not a copyright infringement piece. The monkey selfie right now is the example. If you don't know that, the monkey selfie is where a guy, he taught these monkeys how to use the shutter, how to take pictures of themselves. He then wanted to use it later. And an organization came out and said, you can't use it because you don't own it. The monkeys own it. Well, the courts came out and said, no, it has to be a human creator. I will say, though, I've seen a lot of things come out in some library journals about how some of the AI, there are lawsuits because of the training the chat bots. So there are some issues that are coming out on a totally different side with authors and publishers, just because of how they're using their work, these creators' work, to train the chatbots. But as far as right now, the things that are being created, it's, to me, more of an ethical issue because it's not a copyright infringement. But you should continue to look at the U.S. Copyright Office to make sure you stay up to date, because they'll constantly update it when they have new things.
And on this slide, we won't go into it too deeply, but this is an example of Google Gemini, and I typed in write an essay about the symbolism of color in the novel The Great Gatsby, and it spit all that out within seconds. There is a place you can go where you can, on that, where you can like say, give me more details about where the information came from. So you can see on that screenshot there what's green, and then there's a drop down arrow which will tell you where it came from, which is very helpful. And I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, so like Jen mentioned, we're doing office hours this afternoon, so you can feel free to jump on office hours if you have any follow-up questions, or you can email me, or always contact Brandon or any of the folks at NCDPI, and they'll forward your questions on to us.
Absolutely. Great. Well, just as we close out, we would love it if in your reflection journal you answered these 3 questions: the what, so what, now what? What important information did you learn from these amazing presenters today? Why does it matter for students and for teachers? And what resources will you use with students next in the classroom? So you can pause here and go ahead and fill that out, or fill out when we are concluded here. And we just want to make sure that you know how to get to your CEU certificate. That's right here in this link here. It's also available in your reflection journal. And we just want to say thank you again to our amazing friends over at Copyright and Creativity. And thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.